The wind whispered through the metallic ruins of Lyra 9, carrying with it the dry scent of dust and rusted steel. The city once shimmered with trade ships, lights, and laughter. Now, it was silent, a graveyard of machines and memories. A lone figure moved through the fog. Bare footsteps pressed softly against the cracked ground, leaving no sound. A faint shimmer followed her, like light bending through glass. To anyone watching, there was nothing there. She was invisible. At least, she believed so. Her name was Sarah, one of the last survivors of the Kyrian, a proud alien race known for their silver eyes and skin that could merge with light. But Sarah was no warrior. She was a scientist, thin and tired, her invisibility cloak flickering weakly every few seconds. The device on her wrist blinked red, its energy cell dying. She clutched a small metal box against her chest. Inside it was food, scavenged from what remained of the old human base. Each piece was stolen in silence. She had been doing this for days, stealing, hiding, surviving. Lyra 9 had been abandoned by humans years ago after the Great War ended. Or so she thought. As she crossed the main avenue, she froze. Somewhere, behind the fog, a sound echoed, a faint metallic click. Like a trigger being pulled. Sarah pressed her back against a wall, her cloak humming faintly. The shimmer around her wavered. She held her breath. Nothing moved. Only the slow rhythm of her heartbeat filled her ears. Then, from the distance, a soft voice broke the silence. "I know you're there." Her eyes widened. The words were deep, calm, and human. Impossible. She scanned the fog, trembling. Her device couldn't be malfunctioning, it had worked perfectly against drones and cameras. No living eye could see her. Yet the man's voice was steady, sure, as if speaking directly into her mind. The voice came again, closer this time. "You don't have to hide." Sarah's hands shook. She slowly turned the dial on her wrist, amplifying the invisibility field until her vision blurred from the strain. The device sparked, but she didn't stop. The voice had to be wrong. Humans couldn't see her. Not anymore. They'd left this planet. But then she saw it, a silhouette in the fog. A tall man, standing by the edge of a broken corridor, wearing the old grey uniform of the Terran Defense Corps. He was unarmed, or at least, he looked that way. His face was hidden beneath the shadow of his helmet, but his eyes glowed faintly, silver blue like light reflected on ice. And they were staring right at her. Sarah's throat tightened. For the first time in weeks, she felt truly seen. The man took a slow step forward, hands raised slightly, showing he meant no harm. "I've watched you for 3 nights," he said softly. "You take food, move carefully, never harm anything. You're not a scavenger drone." Sarah's breath hitched. He had been watching her. All this time. "Stay back," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You're not supposed to see me." He paused, his expression unreadable. "Then I must be broken," he replied quietly. "Because I see you clearly." Her invisibility flickered again, exposing half her face, soft, tired, and beautiful beneath alien markings. Her silver eyes darted nervously, reflecting the dim neon light from the ruins. The man didn't move. He simply looked at her like one might look at a ghost. "What's your name?" he asked. "Sarah," she whispered, lowering her gaze. "And you? You shouldn't be here." He almost smiled, though sadness touched his tone. "I could say the same. Everyone left Lyra 9 years ago." "Not everyone," she said. "Some of us had nowhere to go." Her cloak failed completely for a moment, revealing her full form, elegant and fragile, her skin a soft shade between silver and violet, covered in faint bioluminescent veins that glowed like constellations under her skin. Then it flickered back to invisibility. The man stepped closer, carefully placing a small metal canister on the ground, rations, unopened. "You don't need to steal anymore," he said. "If you need food, take this." Sarah looked at him, uncertain. "Why would a human help me?" He shrugged slightly. "Maybe because no one else is left to." For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind carried dust through the hollow streets, whispering across empty rooftops. Finally, Sarah took a hesitant step forward and reached for the canister. The shimmer of her cloak broke completely this time, her invisibility gone. For the first time, Daniel Cross, the last stationed human on Lyra 9, saw her clearly. And she saw something strange in his eyes. Not hatred, not fear, but recognition. As if he'd been waiting for her. She turned quickly, clutching the food, and whispered, "If you saw me, others will too. They'll come." Daniel frowned. "Others?" Before she could answer, a sharp beeping echoed from above, the sound of a scanner drone locking onto a signal. Sarah's eyes widened in horror. "They found me," she breathed. Daniel's hand went to his rifle, eyes scanning the fog. The silence shattered as a red light swept across the street, followed by the screech of burning engines. The invisibility was gone. The hunt had begun. And for the first time, the human and the alien girl stood side by side, both visible, both exposed, under the crimson light of the returning machines. The red light cut through the fog like a blade. Sirens echoed in the distance, followed by the hiss of air turbines. The drone was close, too close. Sarah's breath came fast as she pressed against the wall, the shimmer of her invisibility cloak long gone. Sparks flickered at her wrist, the device broken beyond repair. The illusion that once kept her safe had burned out. The human, Daniel Cross, stood beside her, calm and focused. His rifle gleamed faintly in the red haze. He didn't look surprised or afraid. He looked like a man who had seen this before. "Stay behind me," he said quietly, scanning the sky. Sarah hesitated. "You can't fight that thing. It's not human." Daniel didn't look at her. "Neither are you. But I still helped you." Before she could reply, the drone dropped lower, its black metal body unfolding, glowing sensors shifting as it swept the street. A voice spoke from its speakers, cold and emotionless. "Target signature confirmed. Kyrian fugitive detected." Sarah's heart froze. They had found her. Daniel raised his rifle, aiming at the drone's central eye. One shot, clean and silent. The plasma bolt tore through the air and hit the sensor. The drone's voice distorted into static, sparks bursting from its side. "Move!" Daniel shouted. They ran, boots pounding the metallic ground. The streets of Lyra 9 twisted into a maze of broken tunnels and shattered vehicles. The air was thick with dust and the smell of ozone. Behind them, the drone roared to life again, its damaged body firing energy blasts that scorched walls and melted metal. A single hit would vaporize flesh and bone. Sarah stumbled as a blast tore open the ground beside her. Daniel caught her arm, pulling her to safety behind a collapsed transport. His hands were rough, his grip firm, but there was something strangely gentle about the way he held her, like he was protecting something fragile. She looked up at him, confusion filling her eyes. "Why are you helping me? Your kind destroyed my people." Daniel didn't answer immediately. He looked toward the horizon, where the fog glowed red under the drone's searchlights. Finally, he said, "Not my kind. Just the ones who gave the orders." There was bitterness in his tone, old and deep. The drone's voice echoed again. "Fugitive locked. Deploying second unit." Sarah's eyes widened. "There's more coming." "Then we go underground," Daniel said. He led her to a maintenance hatch half buried under rubble. It hissed as he forced it open. The smell of rust and stale air rose from the darkness below. "After you," he said. Sarah hesitated. Trusting a human went against everything she'd been taught. Her people had called humans monsters, destroyers, predators of the stars. But this one, his eyes weren't filled with hate. They were filled with something else. A quiet pain. She climbed down the ladder, her silver skin glowing faintly in the darkness. Daniel followed, sealing the hatch above them. The city's noise faded, replaced by the hum of old generators and dripping water. They moved through a narrow corridor lit only by flickering emergency lights. The air was heavy with silence. Finally, Sarah turned to him. "You said you've been watching me. How?" "No human eyes can see through a Kyrian cloak." Daniel stopped walking. The glow from his optics reflected off the wet walls. "You're right," he said. "Human eyes can't." He reached up and tapped the side of his head. The faint blue light in his pupils pulsed once. "These aren't human anymore." Sarah frowned. "What do you mean?" He looked at her fully for the first time, really looked, and for a moment, she could see the thin scars running from his temples down to his jaw. The metal beneath his skin shimmered faintly. They called it the Aegis Sight Project, he said. They wanted soldiers who could see through cloaks, through heat, through darkness. See every lie. Every invisible enemy. Her voice trembled. They turned your eyes into machines? He nodded. And when the war ended, they left us behind. Said we weren't normal anymore. For a moment, Sarah forgot the fear. Her gaze softened. She saw the loneliness behind his calm face, the kind of isolation that only outcasts understood. So that's why you saw me, she whispered. Daniel gave a small nod. And why the drones will, too. Those machines use the same tech. Once they scan your energy signature again, this city will burn. Sarah clutched the small food box tighter. They won't stop until I'm dead. Then you'll have to stop running, he said quietly. She looked at him, uncertain. What are you suggesting? He looked back up the corridor. If we can reach the power station in Sector 9, I can disable the scanner grid. It'll buy you time. Maybe even enough to leave this planet. Sarah blinked, disbelief and hope mixing in her chest. You'd risk your life for me? Daniel adjusted his rifle, a faint smile touching his lips. Maybe I'm tired of seeing ghosts. For a long moment, neither spoke. The distant echo of drones grew softer, they were still searching above ground. Sarah finally whispered, You shouldn't be able to see me. Yet you do. Daniel's eyes met hers, glowing faintly in the dark. Maybe some things aren't meant to stay invisible. Deep beneath the ruins of Lyra 9, the tunnels whispered with echoes of an older world, one built by humans, forgotten by time. Dim lights flickered weakly, painting both the man and the alien girl in shades of blue and shadow. Sarah walked a few steps behind Daniel, her silver-violet skin catching the faint glimmer of his rifle's light. Every now and then, she glanced at him, cautious, curious. The man moved like a soldier, every motion silent, measured, precise. Yet there was something strange about him. He didn't behave like the stories said humans would. When she was a child, Sarah had heard tales of the Sky Eaters, humans who burned worlds, who saw beauty only as something to conquer. But the man walking ahead of her had risked his life to protect hers. Why? She watched him stop near a large metal door. He placed his palm on a sensor panel. It beeped once, then glowed faintly green. The door slid open with a deep metallic sigh. Old military shelter, Daniel said quietly. Power cells down here still work. They stepped inside. The air was warmer, faintly humming with electricity. Screens on the walls blinked alive, showing static, old transmission codes, long-dead signals. Sarah's eyes widened. You live here? Daniel gave a half-smile. If you can call it living. Just me, the noise, and ghosts. He moved to a table and placed his rifle down. The faint blue from his eyes reflected off the steel. Sarah stood near the doorway, hesitant. You can sit, he said softly, not looking at her. You're safe here. Safe. The word felt foreign. She lowered herself onto a bench, still alert, her cloak device resting dead on her wrist. Daniel opened a ration pack and tossed one toward her. She caught it awkwardly, eyes narrowing. I don't need your pity, she said. It's not pity, he replied, tearing open his own. It's dinner. For the first time, she let out a faint laugh, soft, unsure, but real. The sound surprised even her. Daniel looked up, eyes glinting faintly. That's better, he said. Your people ever smile? She frowned slightly. Not when humans are around. Fair, he admitted. We didn't exactly give your kind reasons to. Sarah stared at him for a long moment. His face was calm, but his hands trembled slightly when he touched the food. Not from fear, from memory. She could see the ghosts behind his eyes. Daniel, she said quietly, testing his name for the first time. Why are you still here? Everyone else left this planet years ago. He didn't answer at first. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small pendant, a simple metal locket shaped like a star. He opened it. Inside was a faded picture of two smiling faces, a woman and a little boy. My family, he said softly. They were on one of the evac ships. It never made it out. Sarah's voice lowered. I'm sorry. He closed the locket gently. I stayed behind after the war. Thought maybe I could find them. Or at least find their signal. She looked around at the flickering screens, realizing why he had never left. This wasn't just survival, it was punishment. He finally looked up at her. Your turn. Why are they hunting you? Sarah hesitated. Her fingers tightened around her wrist device. I worked on something forbidden, she said finally. A project meant to cloak ships from human scanners. But it went wrong. The field didn't just hide us from sight, it erased heat, sound, even energy signatures. Daniel frowned. So complete invisibility. She nodded slowly. But it came with a price. The prototype field started consuming everything it touched, light, warmth, even memories. We shut it down too late. Half my colony vanished into nothing. Her voice broke. They blamed me. I ran. Daniel stared at her, not with anger, but something else. Understanding. Guilt, he said softly. It's heavier than armor. Sarah looked away, tears glistening faintly in her silver eyes. You shouldn't have helped me. I bring only danger. He stood and walked closer, stopping a few feet from her. I don't help people because it's safe, he said. I help them because it's right. For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of the shelter filled the silence, wrapping them both in an uneasy calm. Then, from one of the consoles, a faint tone beeped. Daniel turned quickly, eyes narrowing. The screen flickered with movement, a red dot blinking near the surface. Drones, he muttered. They're scanning the tunnels now. Sarah stood. They'll find us. Not yet, he said, moving to another console. If I reroute the power grid, I can mask our heat signatures. But it'll burn the rest of the shelter's systems. Then you'll lose your base, she said. He looked back at her, a faint smile forming. Maybe it's time to stop hiding in shadows. Sarah stared at him, at the strange human who saw what others couldn't, who didn't run from what he didn't understand. In that moment, something changed in her chest. The fear didn't vanish, but it softened, replaced by a spark of trust. As the lights dimmed and the hum of the machines faded, the two stood together in silence, surrounded by darkness. Sarah whispered, almost to herself, You shouldn't be able to see me. Daniel's voice was steady. Maybe I'm not looking with my eyes anymore. The storm over Lyra 9 had a heartbeat now. Far above the ruins, thunder rolled through crimson clouds, echoing down into the tunnels below. The power flickered inside the shelter. Old screens blinked warnings in red, surface activity detected. Multiple heat signatures inbound. Daniel's eyes narrowed as he studied the readings. They found us, he said quietly. Sarah stepped closer, her face pale under the flickering light. Already? We masked the heat. They're not using heat anymore, Daniel replied. They're using pulse tracking, searching for movement, sound, even vibrations. She swallowed hard. Hunters. He turned toward her. What did you say? She met his gaze. They're not ordinary drones. They're called hunters, built by the same human corporations that fought the Kyrian. Machines made to finish what soldiers couldn't. Once they lock on, they don't stop. Daniel grabbed his rifle and checked the charge pack. Then we make them stop. Sarah's voice trembled. You can't fight them. They'll tear this place apart. He looked at her calmly. You're right. That's why we won't be here when they arrive. The shelter shuddered violently as an explosion thundered from above. Dust rained from the ceiling. Red warning lights filled the hall. Daniel moved fast, grabbing a small pack from the wall. There's an emergency exit at the north tunnel. Lead straight to the drainage fields. Move. Sarah followed, the metal floor cold beneath her bare feet. Her broken invisibility cloak swung uselessly at her wrist, sparking faintly. Another blast shook the ground. Pipes burst overhead, spraying steam. Through the noise, she heard the sound of claws scraping metal, slow, deliberate, mechanical. The hunters were close. They reached the end of the corridor. Daniel slammed his hand on the hatch controls. Come on, come on. The system denied the command, access locked. He cursed under his breath and ripped a metal panel open, exposing wires. Sparks flew as he bypassed the circuit manually. The door opened with a hiss just as a shadow moved behind them. Sarah turned. From the smoke, a tall figure stepped forward, a machine shaped like a humanoid predator, with glowing red eyes and armor that shimmered with adaptive camouflage. Its claws clicked as it scanned the tunnel, its voice cold and synthetic. Fugitive identified. Human ally confirmed. Termination authorized. Daniel pulled Sarah through the door and fired. The plasma bolt hit the hunter square in the chest. It staggered, but didn't fall. The machine returned fire. Bolts of searing light scorched the wall beside them. Daniel rolled to cover, shouting, "Go! Run!" Sarah hesitated. "You'll die." He reloaded and smirked faintly. "Not today." She ran down the tunnel, light feet barely touching the ground. Daniel followed, firing bursts over his shoulder. The air behind him burned with blue fire. They emerged into a vast underground chamber, an ancient reactor hall, filled with broken generators and hanging cables. The hum of power still lingered faintly. "This way!" Daniel shouted, jumping over debris. "The north vent leads outside." Sarah turned, hearing metal footsteps closing in. 2 more hunters dropped from the ceiling, landing with a crash. Their red sensors flared like blood in the dark. Her instinct screamed at her to hide, but there was nowhere left. She turned her broken device toward the machines. "Please," she whispered, pressing the core. The cloak flickered once, then exploded in a burst of static energy. A shockwave rippled through the hall, knocking the hunters back and plunging everything into darkness. Daniel grabbed her arm and pulled her behind a generator. His voice was low, urgent. That blast shorted their senses. "We've got 30 seconds before they recover." Sarah's chest heaved. "You knew this place. You planned this." "Not planned," he said, reloading again. "Hoped." A faint smile tugged at her lips despite the fear. "Humans always hope, don't they?" "Even when we shouldn't," he replied. The hunters began to move again, their heavy steps echoing closer. Daniel handed Sarah a small handheld emitter. "Press this when I say so." "What does it do?" "Something stupid," he said. He stood, stepping into the open, rifle glowing bright. "Hey!" he shouted. "You want your target? Come get me." The hunters turned, weapons locking on. They fired, the blasts tore through air and metal. Daniel dove aside, firing back, keeping their attention. "Now," he shouted. Sarah pressed the emitter. The entire chamber shook as a dormant generator came alive, its magnetic coils roaring with blue lightning. The field snapped outward, dragging the hunters into the metal walls like insects pulled by gravity. Their armor screeched, sparks flying as they were crushed against the steel. Daniel fell to one knee, covering his head as the energy storm raged. Then, silence. Only the faint hiss of smoke filled the hall. The hunters lay motionless, their red lights fading. Sarah's hands shook as she turned off the device. "Are they dead?" Daniel rose slowly, breathing hard. "Disabled. For now." She looked at him, dirt, sweat, and firelight painting his face. "You risked your life for someone you barely know." He met her eyes. "I see you, Sarah. Not what you are. Who you are." For a long moment, neither moved. The ruins above groaned as the storm intensified, thunder rolling like drums of war. Sarah whispered, "You shouldn't have seen me." Daniel gave a faint, tired smile. "Maybe I was meant to." Outside, more lights appeared in the clouds, dozens of new signals descending through the atmosphere. Sarah looked up through the cracked ceiling, horror filling her voice. "They're sending more hunters." Daniel tightened his grip on the rifle. "Then we don't run this time." The rain of fire fell from the skies of Lyra 9. Hundreds of crimson streaks cut through the dark clouds, new hunters, descending from orbit like metal angels of death. The planet trembled under their arrival. Inside the ruined reactor chamber, Daniel stood motionless, staring at the radar display flickering on his wrist. The signals multiplied every second. They were surrounded. Sarah's voice broke the silence. There are too many. Even you can't fight that. Daniel didn't answer. His eyes glowed faintly, scanning through the static haze. I need to see what's coming, he murmured. Sarah stepped closer, her tone softer now. You always see. Even when others can't. Why? Daniel exhaled slowly. You really want to know? She nodded. He turned toward her. The dim light reflected off the faint scars around his eyes, old, deep, painful. You asked me once how I could see through your cloak, he said quietly. It's because I was built to. Her brows furrowed. Built? He looked away, his voice low and heavy. After the war began, the Terran Defense Corps started a program, Project Aegis. They wanted soldiers who could hunt cloaked enemies. See through invisibility, radiation, even deception. I was one of the first volunteers. Volunteers? She whispered. His lips tightened. At first, yes. Later, no one had a choice. Sarah felt a chill crawl down her spine. What did they do to you? Daniel touched his temple. They replaced my eyes with something else. Machines, half organic, half quantum. They let me see everything the human brain wasn't meant to. Invisible things. Radiation waves. Energy trails. Even the living aura around sentient beings. He looked at her then, and his voice softened. That's how I see you, Sarah. Not through light, but through life. She stared at him, unable to speak. Her heart raced. You see my soul? He smiled faintly. Something like that. For a long moment, the air was quiet. The hum of distant storms filled the background. Then her voice trembled. That's why you weren't afraid. When you saw me. Daniel nodded. Because I saw someone lost, not someone dangerous. Her eyes glistened with emotion, an alien shimmer like liquid silver. Your people made you to destroy my kind, yet you saved me. He looked down at his hands, rough and scarred. They made me to see threats. But all I've seen since the war ended are ghosts. A small silence passed between them, fragile, almost sacred. Then the ground shook again, snapping them back to reality. The radar beeped sharply. The hunters had landed. Sarah turned to him, voice urgent. We have to run. No, Daniel said firmly. Running won't save you. They've locked onto your biosignature. They'll track you anywhere on this planet. She clenched her fists. Then what do we do? He pointed to a map flickering on a broken console. The old central command tower. That's where the signal is being transmitted from. If we reach it, I can shut down the entire tracking network. Sarah's eyes widened. That's suicide. The tower is guarded, and the hunters will keep coming until we stop them, Daniel cut in. You wanted to know why I can see you? It's because I was never meant to stop seeing. Every light, every soul, every death, I see it all. Every time someone dies, I see the color fade. I'm done watching. There was no anger in his voice. Just quiet exhaustion. Sarah stepped closer. You'll die if you go there alone. He gave a half smile. Then don't let me go alone. Her eyes met his, fear, defiance, something deeper. For the first time, she saw not a soldier, but a man carrying the weight of every life he'd failed to save. I'll go with you, she said finally. He nodded once, firmly. Good. The chamber lights dimmed as he prepared his gear. He handed her a small sidearm, human-made, compact and clean. Ever used one? She shook her head. We use energy bursts, not bullets. Then welcome to old-fashioned war, he said, loading his rifle with a snap. They started moving through the tunnels, shadows stretching across the walls. Sarah followed close behind, her footsteps light, her gaze fixed on the faint blue glow of his eyes cutting through the darkness. At one point, she asked softly, Does it hurt? Seeing too much? He paused. The faint hum of the reactor filled the silence. Every day, he said. But it's worse when I stop looking. They reached a lift shaft leading upward. The wind from above carried the smell of smoke and metal. The city was burning again. Daniel gripped the ladder, ready to climb. Once we reach the tower, I'll need you to access their frequency. You can interface with the Hunter network, right? Sarah nodded hesitantly. Yes. But it'll expose my signal completely. I'll cover you. She hesitated. Why are you doing this, Daniel? He looked down at her. His expression was calm, but his voice was rough with emotion. Because I've spent too long watching people vanish. Not this time. They climbed into the storm together. The red light from the burning sky washed over them as lightning cracked in the distance. When they reached the surface, Sarah looked back at him, soaked in rain, eyes glowing like cold fire, standing between her and the whole machine army. She whispered, "Maybe humans aren't the monsters I was told they were." Daniel gave her a tired, crooked smile. "We're not monsters, Sarah. We're just the ones who kept looking after everyone else stopped." Above them, the first hunter screamed through the sky, its engines roaring like thunder. Daniel raised his rifle. Time to see if they bleed. The sky over Lyra 9 burned red like a dying sun. Rain fell in streaks of fire, hissing as it touched the scorched metal ruins. Amid the chaos, two figures climbed the shattered remains of the old command tower, one human, one alien, united by survival, driven by something deeper than fear. Daniel Cross moved first, his boots gripping the steel ladder that led up the crumbling shaft. His augmented eyes cut through smoke and ash, tracing every movement in the shadows above. Behind him, Sarah followed carefully, her silver skin glowing faintly each time lightning flashed across the ruined skyline. "Are you sure this will work?" she called over the roaring wind. Daniel didn't look back. "No," she exhaled sharply. "That's not comforting." "Wasn't meant to be," he said, pulling himself onto the next level. The command tower stood like a broken tooth against the horizon. Once the heart of human control on Lyra 9, now it was a corpse of steel and wires, humming faintly, alive only with the pulse of the Hunter network. Sarah climbed beside him, gazing across the burning city. Below them, red lights swept through the streets, dozens of hunters, moving in perfect coordination. She could feel their scanning signals crawling through the air like invisible fingers. Daniel adjusted his rifle. "They know we're coming." Sarah's voice was quiet. "Then we make sure they regret waiting." They pushed open a service hatch and stepped into the upper chamber. Inside, cables hung like vines, sparks flashing in the dark. In the center stood a massive control core, the glowing brain of the Hunter fleet. Daniel's optics flickered as he scanned it. "There's your target." Sarah walked closer, her hands trembling slightly as she connected her wrist module to the terminal. "Once I interface, the system will detect me. I'll have about 60 seconds before it calls every hunter here. Then I'll make every second count," Daniel said, moving to cover the main entrance. The terminal hummed. Strange alien symbols mixed with human code appeared on the screens. Sarah's eyes flicked rapidly as she typed, merging languages only she could understand. Sweat ran down her neck, sparks flew from her device. Then she froze. "Daniel, this code, it's not human. It's both." He looked back. "What do you mean?" "The hunters, they're not just machines. They're running on hybrid programming. Kyrian tech fused with human architecture." Daniel's jaw tightened. "So both sides made them?" "Yes," she whispered. "My people tried to end the war by giving humans cloaking intelligence, a way to detect and balance peace. But they turned it into a weapon. A perfect predator that hunts both creator and enemy." Daniel cursed under his breath. "We built monsters together." Sarah's hands trembled over the console. "If I overload the core, I can shut down the entire network, but it'll trigger a surge. Everything within a few kilometers will burn." He turned to her. "Including us?" "Yes." For a moment, thunder drowned out everything. The wind howled through the broken windows, carrying the voices of the dead. Daniel looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Do it." She shook her head. "No. You'll die." He stepped closer, eyes calm but fierce. "I was supposed to die years ago. Every day since has been a bonus. If this ends the killing, it's worth it." Sarah's voice broke. "You don't understand. When the surge hits, it'll destroy the cloak cells in my body. I'll become completely visible, permanently. Daniel smiled faintly. Good. Then the universe will finally see you. Tears filled her silver eyes, glowing like stars. You shouldn't care this much, human. He looked into her eyes. Too late for that. The console beeped, a warning tone. The core was heating up. Outside, the sound of approaching hunters filled the air, hundreds of metallic footsteps closing in, synchronized like an army heartbeat. Sarah placed her palm on the control surface. Once I start, there's no stopping it. Then start, he said, raising his rifle. I'll handle the guests. The chamber shook as plasma bolts ripped through the door. Daniel fired back, dropping 2 hunters in a blaze of blue light. More poured in through the walls, crawling like mechanical beasts. Sarah screamed as energy surged through her arm, light flooding from her veins as she transferred power into the system. It's overloading. Keep going. Daniel shouted, firing non-stop. His armor sparked, blood running down his shoulder. The core pulsed brighter and brighter, filling the room with blinding white light. Sarah fell to her knees, her body flickering, half visible, half light. She looked up through tears. Daniel! He turned toward her, one hand outstretched. I see you, Sarah. Always have. The explosion hit, a storm of fire and electricity. The shockwave tore through the tower, ripping through steel and cloud. For a brief instant, all of Lyra 9 glowed like a second sunrise. Then, silence. When the light faded, the hunters stood motionless, their red eyes dark. The network was dead. Smoke drifted through the shattered tower. Daniel lay on the ground, barely conscious, armor torn and burning. Beside him, Sarah knelt, no longer invisible. Her silver-violet skin glowed softly in the new dawn. She touched his cheek. You did it. His voice was faint, a whisper. No. We did. For the first time in years, the city of Lyra 9 was quiet, not with death, but peace. The storm was gone. Lyra 9 lay in silence. No alarms, no drones, no hum of machines. Only the soft whisper of wind passing through hollow streets and broken towers. Smoke drifted across the battlefield like slow-moving ghosts. The command tower stood half-destroyed, its top split open to the dawn. And in that light, pale and golden after years of blood-red skies, 2 figures lay among the ruins. Sarah stirred first. Her breathing was shallow, her skin no longer shimmering. The invisibility that once defined her was gone. For the first time in her life, she was completely visible, to herself, to the universe, to whoever still watched from the stars. She blinked against the light, her body trembling as she crawled through the debris. Her voice cracked. Daniel? No answer. She pushed aside broken metal beams, her hands bleeding silver. And then she saw him, lying on his back amid the wreckage, armor shattered, chest rising faintly with each breath. She dropped beside him, tears slipping down her cheeks. Daniel! You have to stay awake. His lips curved weakly. Ooh, glow now. She laughed through tears. That's what you wanted, remember? For the universe to finally see me. He coughed softly, blood staining his jaw, but his eyes still shone, those strange silver-blue eyes that saw what others never could. It's beautiful, he murmured. You're beautiful. Her heart broke. Don't talk like that. You're going to live. He gave a faint smile. I've already lived more than I deserved. She shook her head, gripping his hand tightly. No. You saw me when no one else could. You looked at me like I mattered. You can't stop now. His voice softened. You always mattered, Sarah. You just needed someone to show you. A silence fell between them, heavy, warm, eternal. The light from the burning horizon touched them both, wrapping their broken bodies in gold. Sarah leaned down, pressing her forehead to his. Why did you save me? Because, his breath slowed. I was tired of watching people disappear. Tears fell from her eyes, landing on his face. They shimmered like stars on his skin. For a long time, neither moved. The city that had once been filled with war and noise now held its breath for a single moment, as if the whole world waited for his last heartbeat. And when it came, it was soft, a sigh, a whisper, and then silence. Sarah stayed there for hours, holding his hand. She didn't cry anymore. She just sat in the light, feeling the warmth fade from his skin, her own glow reflecting in his glassy eyes. Then she stood. She looked out over the ruined city, her cloak gone, her invisibility ended, but her spirit radiant. The hunters lay scattered, lifeless, their once red eyes dark. Lyra 9 was free. In the following days, the Kyrian scouts returned. They found her walking among the ruins, carrying a human's dog tags around her neck. When they asked who he was, she simply said, "He was the man who saw everything." They didn't understand at first. But when they rebuilt the records, when they saw what he had done, disabling the hunter network, saving both species from annihilation, the name Daniel Cross became legend. The human who saw what no one else dared to look at. The soldier who saw life where others saw war. The man who saw an invisible girl and called her alive. Years passed. Lyra 9 healed. Grass grew again over the broken streets, the wind no longer carried the smell of iron. At night, the sky was clear, stars scattered like silver across black. Sarah often stood on the old tower's remains, looking at them. Sometimes, when the wind was right, she swore she could hear his voice. "I see you, Sarah." And she would whisper back, "I see you too." She kept his rifle beside her home, never polished, never cleaned, just as it had been that final day. On its surface, she carved a single line in both Kyrian and human script. He saw everything, and chose to see good.